Vault-Tec, synonymous with both salvation and betrayal in the Fallout universe. In a world teetering on the brink of annihilation, Vault-Tec rose to prominence, selling hope to the desperate masses and claiming to safeguard humanity's future. But underneath its patriotic promises and shiny advertisements lay a dark truth. The corporation's true agenda was anything but altruistic. Today, we're diving deep into the shadowy history of Vault-Tec, unraveling the layers of deception, corruption, and sinister experimentation that made it one of the most notorious entities in Fallout's dystopian history. From its meteoric rise as a defense contractor to its insidious role in reshaping humanity after the Great War, Vault-Tec's legacy is a chilling tale of corporate greed taken to its most extreme. Before we dive in, I've done my best not to repeat information unless it's essential for context. This is more of a storytelling experience than a visual one, so feel free to sit back, tune in, and let it play while you handle your daily grind. The Vault-Tec Corporation, a name that looms large in Fallout's dystopian history. It was a predominant defense corporation, a juggernaut that reigned supreme in America before the Great War. With its grip on government contracts, Vault-Tec orchestrated the creation of the Vaults, a sprawling network of bunkers touted as humanity's last hope in the face of nuclear annihilation. By the time the bombs fell, Vault-Tec was a trillion-dollar empire with investments stretching across countless industries. Its wealth and influence towered over the United States government, a nation left economically crippled by the relentless, decade-long Sino-American War. To Vault-Tec's leadership, America was already a failed state, a relic of a dying world. And so, they shifted their priorities, pouring billions into Project Safehouse, not to save the masses, but to safeguard their own survival and fuel a series of insidious social experiments. Vault-Tec's vision went far beyond mere survival bunkers. The vaults became a grand, calculated experiment, gathering data for their own purposes and for their secretive allies in the Enclave. Their cynicism ran so deep that Barb Howard, one of the company's key figures, entertained the idea of hastening the Great War to wipe the slate clean and rebuild civilization on their own terms. Despite this Machiavellian ambition, Vault-Tec's legacy would falter. When the nuclear inferno consumed the world, the company itself crumbled. The Vaults, riddled with flaws and dark intentions, failed their populations more often than not, transforming into symbols of betrayal. Meanwhile, remnants of Vault-Tec survived in isolated pockets. Select junior members, sealed in cryostasis in Vault 31 as part of Bud Askin's twisted experiment, lingered on, a haunting testament to the corporation's penchant for unethical science. Even the company's name carries the weight of its convoluted history. Though consistently spelled as Vault-Tec with a C since Fallout 3, alternate spellings like Vault-Tec with a K and Vault-Tec with a CH occasionally appear, whether as typos or remnants of forgotten branding. Yet Vault-Tec's rise to prominence began much earlier than most realize. As far back as 2031, the corporation acquired Morgantown's local college and transformed it into Vault-Tec University. This move wasn't just a rebranding effort, it was a calculated investment in future talent. Some of Vault-Tec's most influential executives and scientists either graduated from or taught there. This strategic foundation would prove invaluable when the United States descended into chaos. By the early 2050s, as the Euro-Middle Eastern War and the New Plague destabilized the world, Vault-Tec was ready to seize the moment. The government's Project Safehouse, launched in 2054, was a desperate effort to prepare for nuclear apocalypse, and Vault-Tec was quick to step in, claiming the lucrative contract to build the nation's last hope. Their dominance was fueled by the grim reality of government desperation. Bankrupt and running on borrowed time, the United States financed Project Safehouse with junk bonds, managing to commission only 122 vaults, enough to save less than 0.1% of the population. The price tag was astronomical, with Vault 13 alone ballooning from an initial budget of $400 billion to a staggering $645 billion. Oversight was practically non-existent, buried under the new amended Espionage Act, which cloaked the entire endeavor in secrecy. Vault-Tec's private security forces were given free rein, authorized to use lethal force to protect their assets. This environment of unchecked power bred corruption and mismanagement, turning Project Safehouse into a cesspool of embezzlement long before the infamous Vault experiments began. Yet, despite these flaws, Vault-Tec delivered technological marvels, cutting-edge construction techniques and shelters that, in some cases, truly did save lives. By 2063, most of the vaults were complete, but delays plagued some, including the infamous Vault 13, which didn't even break ground until the same year. Construction in the Washington, D.C. area faced similar setbacks. Meanwhile, Vault-Tec expanded its ambitions northward, advertising vaults in newly annexed Canada, though many were barely in the planning stages. Partnerships with other corporations like Robco Industries brought further advancements. Robco's Pip-Boys became a cornerstone of Vault life, seamlessly integrated into the infrastructure thanks to Bud Askin's licensing efforts. During the Resource Wars, Vault-Tec leveraged its immense power to ensure its dominance, even sabotaging cold fusion research to perpetuate the chaos. It was a move emblematic of their strategy: thrive in the face of destruction, no matter the human cost. By the late 2070s, Vault-Tec had abandoned all pretense of saving the United States. To the corporation's elite, America was a sinking ship, and global thermonuclear war was the inevitable iceberg. Their calculations estimated that such a catastrophe would obliterate 90% of Earth's life, rendering efforts to preserve the nation pointless. Instead, Vault-Tec redirected its resources to a grander, far darker purpose, transforming the vaults into massive social experiments. Under the guise of humanity's salvation, the corporation crafted scenarios ranging from ethically questionable to outright monstrous. The most benign experiments aimed to explore innovative technologies, like converting mundane exercise into socially useful outputs or manipulating dwellers' moods for improved societal harmony. At their most insidious, the vaults flirted with crude forms of mind control. Vault 88, for example, was designed as a proving ground, where experimental devices could be tested before being deployed on other vaults in a strict corporate timeline. Human lives became a disposable commodity, mere stepping stones to innovation. Ethical objections? Dismissed as quaint and counterproductive. Yet, Vault-Tec's vision didn't stop there. The experiments were merely one layer of a far-reaching plan devised alongside the Enclave. The ultimate goal wasn't rebuilding Earth's shattered remains, but abandoning it altogether. Using the data harvested from these human trials, the Enclave dreamed of constructing a generational starship, humanity's escape hatch to another world. Spearheaded by Stanislaus Braun under the Societal Preservation Program, only 17 of the 122 vaults were ever intended to function properly as controlled vaults. The remaining 105 were specifically engineered to fail, each designed around scenarios that ranged from grimly inconvenient to outright fatal. Some vaults were understocked with food synthesizers, others were populated solely by men or programmed to open prematurely. To Vault-Tec and the Enclave, the cost in human lives was negligible. What mattered was the data. Cold, unfeeling, and invaluable for designing the perfect society. Within Vault-Tec's leadership, a more radical faction sought to use the war itself as a mean to reshape humanity. Bob Howard and Bud Askins envisioned the nuclear apocalypse as an opportunity to wipe the slate clean. By carefully engineering social experiments, they believed Vault-Tec could identify the ideal conditions for humanity to thrive. This vision, packaged as a spirit of competition, was pitched to megacorporations like Robco, Big MT, Repcon, Aerospace, and Westtech. These like-minded entities were invited to participate, each crafting their own secret experiments within the Vault network. Howard even entertained the possibility of these corporations triggering the nuclear war themselves, ensuring their designs for a post-apocalyptic utopia would emerge unchallenged. To further this agenda, Vault 76's overseer received clandestine orders to seize control of the Appalachian Automated Launch System, effectively putting nuclear weapons into Vault-Tec's hands. Of course, none of these sinister machinations were public knowledge. In January 2077, Vault-Tec was still basking in its reputation as one of America's most promising companies. Public anxiety over the Sino-American War and the ongoing resource wars only bolstered its stock value, especially after the Anchorage reclamation. Vault-Tec capitalized on the fear, marketing single spaces in vaults as golden tickets to survival. But beneath the polished ads lay a grim truth. Vault-Tec's success was tied to the continuation of the war. Peace would render the Vault program irrelevant and bankrupt the company. This perverse incentive meant Vault-Tec had every reason to root for, or even catalyze, a nuclear conflict. Despite their marketing success, cracks began to form. Repeated drills in completed vaults eroded public trust, creating a cry wolf effect that led to declining participation. When the Great War finally erupted on October 23, 2077, many vaults were incomplete, and only a fraction of the population sought refuge in those that were operational. The Enclave's grand plans unraveled as well. Critical components like the White Spring facility were severed from the network, crippling their long-term strategy. Still, some of Vault-Tec's initiatives saw partial success. Vaults 31, 32, and 33 populated and sealed as scheduled, and some semblance of Vault-Tec's experiments persisted underground. Yet, the devastation fell short of their apocalyptic projections. Against all odds, survivors began rebuilding on the surface. In 2091, Vault 8 opened, giving rise to Vault City, while the demonstration vault in Los Angeles reopened a year later, its inhabitants founding Aditum in the ruins of the Boneyard. Vault-Tec's grand ambition to redefine humanity ultimately crumbled under the weight of reality. Most vaults failed within a few centuries, becoming little more than scavenger pits for surface dwellers. In the public consciousness, they were reduced to symbols of elitism, hidden sanctuaries for the rich as the world burned. Yet, remnants of Vault-Tec's legacy persisted in unexpected ways. In Vault 32, a woman named Rose McLean escaped and stumbled upon the burgeoning New California Republic. Her flight would inadvertently set off a chain of events that led to the destruction of Shady Sands, the NCR's capital, at the hands of her vengeful ex-husband. This act plunged the Republic into chaos, proving that even in death, Vault-Tec's shadow loomed large over humanity's fragile attempts to rebuild. Vault-Tec, though infamous for its vaults, was a company whose reach extended far beyond the creation of underground bunkers. At its core, Vault-Tec was a defense contractor dedicated to developing the comprehensive suite of technologies designed to protect citizens from the devastation of nuclear war. In addition to its signature vaults, the company produced more affordable alternatives, such as the Series 1000 shelter, and contracted out its extensive technological innovations to anyone in need of reliable, subterranean defense. Vault-Tec's prowess in heavy construction, along with its capacity to design systems for long-term population sustenance, meant that it was not just selling the concept of survival, it was selling the future of human life underground. The company also created a series of cutting-edge technologies that would become integral to Vault life, including nuclear reactors, medical devices like the organ extractor, and motion sensors derived from Walt's electronics blueprints. Even more advanced gadgets were produced, such as the SimTech 5000 virtual reality suite, designed to help Vault dwellers accommodate to the outside world, and the Vault-Tec Assisted Targeting System, or VATS, which would allow them to defend themselves from any threat lurking beyond the Vault doors. For everyday comfort, Vault-Tec went further, offering inventions like SimuSun lighting, floor-suck auto cleaners, Culminator 3000 kitchen systems, and even Entertainatron rooms to entertain those living within the vaults. And for a sense of security, eye-on-you surveillance cameras were a staple of Vault-Tec's infrastructure, ensuring that no one ever felt truly alone. Despite Vault-Tec's reputation for producing high-quality, reliable technology, the company was often willing to compromise with its values in the pursuit of profit. Vault-Tec frequently outsourced critical elements of Vault infrastructure, opting to work with the lowest bidders to maximize their bottom line. The infamous example of the water chip is perhaps the most telling. What was meant to be a vital component to ensure the survival of Vault populations ended up being a costly, subpar product, the repercussions of which are felt throughout the Fallout universe. The drive to cut corners also led to long-term lucrative partnerships with other corporations. Robco, for example, was instrumental in the creation of the Pip-Boy, one of the most successful joint ventures in history. Vault-Tec's collaboration with General Atomics ensured a steady supply of nuclear reactors, while Radiation King filled the gap by providing TVs and other appliances for Vault life. These partnerships were instrumental in keeping Vault-Tec's operations running smoothly, but underscored the corporation's penchant for collaboration over innovation, with quality often taking a back seat to efficiency and profit. Though, Vault-Tec's efforts weren't confined to serving the wealthy elite. For those who couldn't afford a spot in the vaults, Vault-Tec created a division called BudgeTech, which developed cost-efficient alternatives. The crown jewel of BudgeTech's offerings was the controversial and downright chilling Plan D, a banana-flavored cyanide capsule, marketed as the most humane way to escape the horrors of the outside world. This cynical approach to survival highlighted Vault-Tec's complete disregard for human life, treating its customers as expendable entities in a corporate game. But even within the company, workers were not immune to exploitation. Vault-Tec employees were subjugated to rigorous and often absurd regulations outlined in the infamous employee handbook. Among these guidelines was the shocking rule that bathroom breaks should last no longer than 2.25 minutes, a mere 135 seconds. Labor practices were harsh, and unethical medical experiments, such as those carried out at Nuka World, were a regular part of the work environment. These experiments often left workers with debilitating medical issues, including depression and suicides, but were quietly buried under the weight of corporate interests. Vault-Tec's status as a government contractor allowed it to operate with a level of immunity that most corporations could only dream of. Its affairs were protected under the new amended Espionage Act, and any attempts to expose its dark secrets were likely to result in devastating consequences for the whistleblower. The corporation went so far as to conduct regular drills for vault-bound citizens, testing their ability to adapt to the pressure of a potential nuclear disaster. These drills, often taking place multiple times a week, were designed to ensure that when the time came, the future vault dwellers wouldn't enter the shelters in an orderly fashion. Members of the experimentation staff were also required to participate, often under the implied threat of force, and in exchange for their participation, were offered hefty paychecks to keep their silence. In this way, Vault-Tec maintained absolute control over its operations, leaving little room for resistance or ethical consideration. It was a machine built on secrecy, exploitation, and the unflinching belief that survival was a commodity to be bought and sold. To them, survival was a business, and human lives were simply just a price of admission. Their public image was one of patriotic devotion and civic duty, marketed as the savior of the American way of life in a post-nuclear world. Through advertising and propaganda, Vault-Tec presented itself as the key to preserving America's economic ideals, democracy, and values by safeguarding citizens within the underground vaults. The message was clear. Vault-Tec was the future of America, and its Vault family would rebuild the nation after the devastation of the Great War, ensuring that the best and brightest of American society could rise again. Unfortunately, behind this veneer of civic mindlessness, Vault-Tec's leadership operated with an entirely different set of values. The company's true goal was not to preserve democracy, equality, or the values of the American people, but to consolidate power under the hands of a select few individuals who were completely indifferent to human life. Vault-Tec's executives, comprising psychopathic and sociopathic leaders, harbored no illusions about reviving the United States as a democracy. To them, America was a failed nation, bankrupt both financially and morally, and no longer worth saving. Instead, Vault-Tec saw itself as the last bastion of humanity, preserving only its own interests, with the leaders believing that they, rather than the American government or its people, were the true heirs to the nation's legacy. As a result, the company slowly but surely abandoned any commitment to democratic values. Vault-Tec's vaults were not built with the intention of preserving communities, but to conduct inhumane social experiments on numerous groups of people. Vault 76, for example, was given secret orders to seize control of American nuclear silos, ensuring that only Vault-Tec could control those who survived the war. Vault 31, under the leadership of Overseer Hank McLean, was tasked with eliminating any survivors of the war, including those who might still be in control of government or military factions. Even when Vault-Tec continued to promote pro-American themes within its vaults, the true ideals of democracy were replaced by the company's obsession with creating a self-sustaining monopoly on humanity's future. Vault-Tec believed that if it controlled all surviving humans, it would have eradicated all potential competitors, thereby eliminating conflict and ruling over what remained of humanity. As mentioned a few times throughout the video, the vaults themselves, rather than functioning as life-saving shelters, were instead designed to serve as horrific breeding grounds for social experimentation. Most were intended to fail in order to provide data on the consequences of failure, while only a small minority were actually designed to keep people safe. In some cases, such as Vault 12, where radiation exposure was deliberately used to test the impact of long-term exposure, the experiments bordered on the grotesque. Vault 111, with its cryogenic stasis pods, might have promised a peaceful life, but its hidden agenda was to create conditions where vault dwellers could be monitored for extended periods of time without their consent. Vault-Tec's employees were often complicit in these experiments, even as they were kept in the dark about the true nature of the work they were conducting. Employees were subjected to the same ruthless practices that defined Vault-Tec's corporate culture. The company's management didn't just exploit workers for their labor, they subjected them to physical and psychological experimentation, often without their knowledge. The few employees who attempted to speak out were silenced, sometimes through coercion, and the company's draconian policies made whistleblowing an impossibility. The pervasive culture of abuse was reinforced through a toxic work environment that required total loyalty, often encouraging subordinates to abuse their power to maintain the status quo. The most heinous of these practices took place at places like Nuka World, where Vault-Tec scientists conducted experiments on people, leading to deaths and severe mental health consequences. Their obsession with control extended far beyond its vaults, however. The company was also behind the deliberate escalation of the Sino-American War, intending to provoke a nuclear conflict that would eliminate all non-Vault survivors, ensuring that only Vault-Tec's self-contained world of scientifically engineered society would be left. This devastating plan failed to account for the resilience of human survival and the fact that some factions, like the Enclave, had their own plans for post-war domination. Vault-Tec's failure to anticipate the possibility of survivors outside its vaults ultimately led to its downfall, but not before it had subjected millions of people to its twisted experiments. Vault-Tec's true legacy is not one of heroism, but of ruthlessness, cruelty, and disregard for human life. Its experiments left a mark on the world, one that would endure long after the Great War, as many vaults failed and their inhabitants were left to perish in the wake of the company's unchecked ambitions. The sense of loyalty that Vault-Tec cultivated within its vaults became a perverse echo of its corporate ideology, encouraging future generations to venerate the company even after its collapse. Vault-Tec's brutal authoritarian systems and its disregard for basic human rights were woven into the fabrics of its vaults, ensuring that even in the aftermath of the war, its influence would persist in the most unlikely places. Vault-Tec promised salvation in an age of nuclear despair, but instead delivered a legacy of exploitation, tragedy, and betrayal. Designed as sanctuaries for humanity, the vaults became grim test beds for experiments that disregarded human life and dignity, even persisting after the Great War. While the corporation's power crumbled in the nuclear aftermath, its shadow continues to loom over the wasteland, shaping the fates of those who survived. Vault-Tec's story is a cautionary tale, a reminder that even in the darkest times, promises of salvation can mask far more sinister intentions. If there's one lesson to take from Vault-Tec's rise and fall, it's that when desperation meets unchecked power, humanity itself becomes the ultimate commodity. Again, I do apologize for this video taking as long as it did to make, but more will come, don't worry. I got a little sidetracked with Ninja Gaiden 2 Black coming out. Ninja Gaiden is my favorite game series on the planet, and I'm glad to see it's getting a little bit of love, so I've been giving a lot of time to that, so again, I do apologize for that. But now that my extreme hype and hyperfixation over Ninja Gaiden is not necessarily over, but it's definitely not as strong as it was, everything is going to return to normal in terms of uploads every few days and everything. I will also include Ninja Gaiden content in there as well, though, so I'm going to revolve between Fallout and Ninja Gaiden. So, until then, do the things, hit the like button, subscribe, and all that weird shit, I guess. Stick around for the next one. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. See you then.